Starting tomorrow, Mom. These are your new duties in this house. Rachel's words kept circling in my head as I stared at the sheet of paper she shoved into my hands. It wasn't a suggestion. It wasn't even a request. It was a command. My own daughter, standing in my own home, had given me a schedule like I was some newly hired maid. If you don't agree, she went on, her tone sharp and practiced, you can pack your things and leave. This house needs someone who actually contributes, not just takes up space. My fingers shook as I scanned the list. 6 a.m. Up to make breakfast. 7. Dress the kids and drive them to school. 8. Start the house cleaning. 9. Laundry. 10. Make lunch. On and on, line after line, all the way until 11 at night when I was expected to be ironing clothes for the next day. And obviously, Mark chimed in from the couch without even glancing away from his phone, that includes paying the house expenses. That's what your pension is for. I froze in the middle of my own living room. The same living room where I'd cradled Rachel in my arms when she was born 34 years ago. Where I'd decorated balloons for her birthdays. Where I'd held her tight when she sobbed through her first heartbreak. And now that little girl looked me dead in the eye with a coldness that pierced my chest. You don't have much time to decide, Mom, she said, blowing on her nails painted a loud neon pink. Mark's already spoken with a lawyer. Since we've been living here for over 2 years, paying bills and taking care of the place, we've got rights. So either you work for us and stay or you can go, and we'll stay anyway. The threat was sharp, undeniable. In the house I'd worked 40 years to pay off, in the home with my name on the deed, my daughter was blackmailing me. Either I accepted becoming their servant, funding their lifestyle and running their household, or I'd be pushed out so they could claim it all. Think it over, Rachel added lightly, admiring her nails. At your age, where else are you going to live on $600 a month? At least here you've got a roof, food, and the grandkids around. Unless you prefer some tiny, lonely apartment. Mark chuckled cruelly. Besides, let's be real. What else are you going to do with your life? This way at least you'll feel useful instead of wasting away in front of the TV like other old ladies. On the floor, Ethan and Sophie were glued to their tablets, oblivious. 8-year-old Ethan glanced up and asked, Grandma, are you making snacks? I'm hungry. The words landed like a slap. To them, I wasn't their grandmother. I wasn't the woman who had worked decades to give them this home. I was just the cook, the maid, the one who was always there. Rachel walked over, placed her manicured hand on my shoulder, and said in that infuriatingly fake, condescending tone, It's not that we don't love you, Mom. Of course we do. That's why we're giving you this chance. But things need order. Someone has to keep the house running. And why does that have to be me? I whispered, my voice trembling. Because you're the one who doesn't work, Mark said flatly. We work, we study, we've got real responsibilities. You just collect a pension. That's not productive. I felt like I'd been slapped again. 40 years I worked. 40 years dragging myself out of bed before sunrise. Riding 2 buses across town to that government office, saving every dime to buy this house. 40 years raising Rachel alone after her father walked out on us when she was 3. Not productive? I repeated, choking on the words. All these years keeping this house, paying bills, cooking meals, watching your kids while you went out, cleaning your messes. That's just what people do when they live somewhere. Rachel cut in with that smug smile I'd grown to hate. We're just making it official now with schedules. Everything will run smoother. I looked around the room and my heart sank. The leather sofa I'd saved for 2 years to buy, stained and torn from the kids jumping on it. The coffee table I'd polished with pride, covered in water rings and burns because no one used coasters. My framed family photos replaced by Mark's movie posters. My books boxed up in the garage to make room for their endless gadgets. Rachel smirked. This will be good for you, Mom. Give you purpose. You've been so down lately. Having responsibilities will lift you up. It was manipulation dressed up as kindness, and it cut me deeper than any insult. She was selling me my own slavery as if it were therapy. And weekends too, Mark added, finally looking up. Saturdays, deep cleaning. Sundays, cook meals for the whole week. That's not cruelty, it's just structure. Makes the house run like a real home. A real home, I muttered bitterly. This is supposed to be my home. The one I paid for. The one I welcomed you into when you had nowhere else. Exactly, Rachel said smoothly. We're a family. And in a family everyone has a role. Ours is to earn money. Yours is to take care of the house. Fair's fair. 6-year-old Sophie tugged on my skirt. Grandma, can I have a cookie? The ones up on the fridge? Her little eyes, so much like Rachel's when she was small, looked at me full of expectation. Grandma always says yes. Grandma always fixes everything. In a minute, sweetheart, I told her softly. No, Sophie, Rachel snapped. From now on, your grandma has a schedule. If you want snacks, you have to wait for snack time. Right now it's 4 o'clock, so she should be making them anyway. My legs shook as I walked to the kitchen, the paper clenched in my hand like a death sentence. Each step felt like falling deeper into a pit. The pantry was nearly bare. 3 broken cookies, an expired can of tuna, half a bag of rice. The fridge wasn't much better. 2 yogurts labeled with Rachel's name, 1 of Mark's beers, and 3-day-old leftovers. Grandma, no cookies. Sophie whined from the living room. I'll figure something out, sweetheart, I called back, though my voice cracked. Rachel's heels clicked behind me, sharp and authoritative. She slapped a new list onto the fridge door. Tomorrow you'll need to go grocery shopping. Here's what we need. Comes to about $150. Oh, and stop at the pharmacy for vitamins and Mark's shampoo. $150? My voice shrank. That's a quarter of my pension. Mom, Rachel groaned, rolling her eyes. Mark is saving so we can buy our own place. We can't waste our income on food. You live here too. It's only fair you pay. Fair. Her twisted logic made me dizzy. Mark wandered into the kitchen in his pajamas, scratching his head. It was Tuesday, 4:30 in the afternoon, and he'd been lying on the couch all day. He cracked open a beer. Tough day, honey. Could you whip up something good for dinner? Tough day. I asked before I could stop myself. You haven't left the house. I work from home on Tuesdays, he said, annoyed. Meetings. Calls. Very stressful. I need to unwind afterward. I glanced at the clock. 3 hours tops. The rest of the day he'd been napping. By the way, he continued, sipping his beer, Rachel and I decided on a few more house rules. When we're watching TV, you need to keep the noise down. Cook earlier if you have to. Just don't disturb us. The absurdity burned in my chest. I was expected to follow their rigid schedule, but also bend it whenever their comfort demanded. Rachel leaned against the counter, smiling that fake, icy smile. Mom, we also think it's better if you move into the small room at the back. Mark and I need the master bedroom. It's bigger and we have more stuff. My stomach twisted. My bedroom. The room I'd slept in for 30 years. The room where I'd wept after my husband died. The room that held every memory of my life. That room is too small, I whispered. It's perfect for you, Rachel said firmly. You don't need much space. And this way Mark and I will have room for our things. It's practical. Mark grinned. And it's closer to the kitchen. Easier for you to get up early to make breakfast without bothering us. The humiliation was complete. And when? I asked, my voice hollow. This weekend works, Rachel chirped, as if she were planning a vacation. Mark can help you move the few things you'll need. The dresser, the bed, the vanity, we'll use those. The furniture I'd bought. The bed where Rachel had been conceived. All of it claimed. That night I lay awake staring at the ceiling, knowing soon even this view wouldn't be mine. When had I stopped being the mother and become the servant? At what moment had I lost the right to exist in my own home? I remembered the night 2 years ago when Rachel and Mark arrived, desperate. Mark had lost his job. Their apartment was gone. They hugged me, cried, promised it was only temporary. You saved us, Mom, Rachel had said. We don't know what we'd do without you. First it was almost sweet. The house full of laughter again. Rachel helping me cook. Mark fixing things. The kids running through the halls. But little by little, what began as favors turned into expectations. Every "sure, honey" from me was another brick in the prison I hadn't realized I was building around myself. At 3 in the morning I heard movement in the kitchen. I slipped down the hall quietly and found Mark shoveling cereal from the box, scattering crumbs across the counter I'd cleaned before bed. Mark, I whispered, careful not to wake the kids. Is everything all right? He looked up, startled, caught like a thief. Yes, I was just hungry. It's nothing, Mark muttered, caught like a kid sneaking cookies. I glanced at the nearly empty cereal box and said quietly, tomorrow there better be cereal in bowls for the children. Oh, come on, don't be dramatic. It's just cereal. Buy more tomorrow. He shrugged, dropping the empty box on the counter and disappearing back into my bedroom. I stood alone in the kitchen, sweeping crumbs into my palm, the silence deafening. 3 a.m, and I was cleaning up his mess while he stretched out in my bed without a single thought about me. This was my life now, serving quietly in the dark while they slept soundly. Friday morning came and I was frying bacon on schedule, because schedules were the law now, when Rachel swept downstairs like a movie star. She wore a red dress I'd never seen before and heels that cost more than a week's groceries. Mom, you'll need to watch the kids all weekend, she announced, pouring coffee into my favorite mug. The one with little painted flowers my husband gave me on our 5th anniversary. Mark and I are going on a couples retreat at a hotel downtown. We need to reconnect after all this stress. A couples retreat? I repeated, blinking. And with what money? Oh, Mom. Always worrying about money. She let out that fake little laugh she'd perfected. Mark got a bonus at work. We deserve a break. A bonus? Mark, who worked maybe 3 hours a day from home, somehow got a bonus. Yet the fridge was always empty, the bills unpaid by him, the groceries left for me. Their bonus didn't cover milk or soap, but it covered champagne sweets. And the kids will be okay with me all weekend? I asked, though I already knew my answer didn't matter. Of course. You're their grandma. Who better? Rachel scrolled her phone casually. Besides, your new schedule has weekends set aside for childcare and deep cleaning. In their twisted little world, my weekends weren't for rest. They were for scrubbing floors and babysitting. Rachel, we need to talk, I said, something inside me snapping. This can't go on. She looked up from her screen, eyebrows raised, genuinely puzzled that I'd dare protest. Talk about what? Your attitude? Because honestly, Mom, you've been grumpy. Maybe you should see a doctor. Hormones at your age. My blood boiled. My anger was a hormonal issue. My exhaustion was mood swings. My rebellion against humiliation was a medical problem. I'm not sick, I said sharply. I'm tired of being treated like an employee in my own home. Employee? She clutched her chest like I'd accused her of murder. Mom, we're family. Families share responsibilities. We work, we earn. You run the house. That's balance. And why does balance mean I pay for everything and work 24 hours a day? My voice trembled, but it was stronger now. Mom, no one asked you to work 24 hours. You've got free time between tasks, she said with a smirk. I turned to the list taped on the fridge. Their version of free time was 30 minutes here and there. Barely enough to sit down, certainly not enough to breathe. And the money? I pressed. Why am I paying for everything when both of you have income? Rachel sighed as though I was a stubborn child. Because we're saving for our future, Mom. You've already had your chance. Now it's our turn. The cruelty hit harder than a slap. In their eyes, my life was already spent. My money, my home, my energy, they belonged to them because my time was over. Mark strolled in then, dressed sharp for once, flashing that grin I'd grown to despise. He kissed Rachel's cheek in a smug little show of unity that left me invisible. All set for the weekend, babe? He asked, not even glancing at me. Yes. I told Mom she'll handle the kids in the house, Rachel replied, as if I were some hired help they'd arranged. Perfect, he said, finally turning to me. Oh, by the way, my mother's coming Monday. She'll need the guest room spotless. She likes breakfast early, 6 a.m. I trust that won't be a problem. His mother. Another person to serve. Another mouth at my table. Another stranger expecting me to wait on her in my own home. And how long will she stay? I asked weakly. Not sure, Mark shrugged. Depends on how she feels. She's been lonely since Dad died, so this will do her good. Of course, my home, free lodging. My labor, free nursing care. Mark, your mother and I don't exactly get along, I reminded him, remembering her snide remarks the last time we met. Oh, don't be silly. She's elderly. She needs attention. You'll get along fine once you're taking care of her. Rachel clasped earrings onto her ears, completing her outfit like a queen preparing to leave. Oh, and Mom, when Mark's mother comes, she should take the master bedroom. We'll bunk in the kids' room for a few days. She needs to be comfortable. The master bedroom. My room. Already stolen from me once, now handed to a woman who barely tolerated me. I would be shoved further into the shadows of my own home while strangers lay in my bed. That weekend was a nightmare beyond anything I had imagined. Rachel and Mark left Friday afternoon, waving goodbye with smiles, leaving behind a long list of childcare rules taped to the fridge. Meal times, screen times, bedtimes, chores. Children need structure, Mom, Rachel had said as she slid into the cab I paid for. If you spoil them, they'll never respect us again. And so it was just me and the kids. Pancakes at 9 sharp. Worksheets at 10. Nap at 1. Play at 3. And of course me, juggling everything at once while their parents sipped cocktails across town. Saturday morning, Ethan spilled orange juice on the rug. It was an accident, he's a kid. But when I grabbed soap and water, I realized I didn't even have enough cleaning supplies. Grandma, Sophie said, parroting her mother's voice. Mom says stains have to be cleaned right away or the carpet is ruined forever. She was right, Rachel had drilled it into them. So by 9 a.m., I was at the supermarket with 2 kids in tow, dropping $30 of my pension on cleaning products I hadn't budgeted for. Grandma, can you buy the cereal Daddy likes? Ethan begged, pointing at the $8 box. I want the cookies Mommy buys, Sophie added, pointing to the $10 bag. I stared at the prices, making desperate mental math. Every dollar spent here meant less for my medicine. Why are you taking so long, Grandma? Ethan asked, annoyed. I'm just making sure I pick the best one, sweetheart. I lied, swallowing the ache in my chest. When we got home, my phone pinged. A message from Rachel. Mom, I hope you bought fresh vegetables. When we get back Sunday, we want the house perfect and the fridge full. Don't let us come home to an empty kitchen. Fresh vegetables. Another $50 I didn't have. Another 2 hours walking back from the store because the taxi money had gone to their hotel. By Sunday, I was on my knees scrubbing floors, folding laundry, ironing shirts, racing to get everything pristine before their grand return. And then my phone rang. It was Lucy, my neighbor of 15 years, the one person who'd seen through the cracks even when I pretended everything was fine. Honey, are you okay? She asked softly. You've seemed so different lately. I see you running to the store every day, always in a rush. What's going on in your house? I'm fine, I lied automatically, folding Mark's shirts. No, you're not, Lucy pressed. I see it in your face. Talk to me, please. For the first time in months, something inside me cracked. Lucy, can you come over? I need to talk to someone. I'll be right there, she said without hesitation. She arrived within minutes. We sat in the spotless kitchen I had polished for Rachel's approval. The kids zoned out in front of the TV. And for the first time I spilled everything. The schedule. The money. The threats. The tiny room. The Sundays I wasn't welcome. Mark's mother moving into my bed. Lucy listened, her expression shifting from disbelief to horror to outrage. Honey, she said finally, her voice sharp with truth. This is abuse. Plain and simple. This is not what family does. This is not love. They say it's fair, that everyone has their role, I whispered, repeating the twisted mantra I'd been fed. No, she snapped, her eyes blazing. In a real family, roles are chosen together. Nobody forces a 66-year-old woman to be their maid. Nobody threatens to throw her out of her own house. That's not love. That's control. Her words hit me like lightning. For the first time, I saw my situation for what it really was. That word hung in the kitchen like smoke. Exploitation. It wasn't family dysfunction. It wasn't a clash of generations. It wasn't me being too old to adapt. No, this was plain brutal exploitation. But what can I do? I asked, tears finally spilling after months of silence. They're right about one thing. At my age, with just my pension, where would I even go? Who else would want me? Honey, look at me, Lucy said, wrapping my hands in hers. You're 66, not 96. You have your house. You've got a steady pension. Your mind is sharp as ever. You don't need them. They need you. Her words hit me like a thunderclap. For so long I had convinced myself I was lucky they let me stay, lucky to have a place. But the place was mine. It had always been mine. And while I thought I was living under their generosity, the truth was the opposite. They were living under mine. And think about this, Lucy pressed, her voice firm. Do you honestly believe this is going to get better? That one day they'll wake up, hug you, and say they'll treat you right? No. Every line you let them cross only sets a new standard. It will keep getting worse. She was right. The schedule hadn't appeared out of nowhere. It was built brick by brick over 2 years of my life, little by little, as favors turned into obligations, and obligations turned into rules. My dignity had been chipped away so gradually I almost didn't notice until it was gone. What would you do if you were me? I asked, though deep down I already knew her answer. I'd throw them out tomorrow, she said without hesitation. And if you're not ready for that yet, at least start by drawing lines. Set boundaries. Charge them for your work. Demand respect in your own house. Remind them who really owns this place. Just then a car door slammed outside. Rachel and Mark were back from their little lover's getaway, sun-kissed, smiling, ready to step back into the role of masters while I played the maid. Honey, Lucy whispered as she stood to leave. If you need anything, help, a reminder that you deserve dignity, call me. Day or night. And think about this, if a maid worked the hours you work and had to pay for the privilege of doing it, how long do you think she'd last? Her question followed me like a ghost as Rachel and Mark breezed into the house, immediately nitpicking everything. No milk. Not enough towels for Mark's mother. Not enough food in the fridge. That night, lying in my bed, the bed I knew would soon no longer be mine, I stared at the ceiling and asked myself for the very first time, what if I just said no? Monday morning arrived like a storm. At 5:30 sharp, the doorbell rang, shrill and demanding. I opened the door to find Marissa, Mark's mother, standing there like royalty with 2 enormous suitcases and a scowl. Finally, she said, pushing past me without so much as a hello. The taxi took forever. I trust Mark told you about my special breakfast needs. My stomach is delicate. I can't eat just anything. It wasn't even 6 a.m. I hadn't brushed my teeth, hadn't touched my hair, and already I was being handed a list of demands. Good morning, Marissa. I croaked, my voice raspy from sleep. Yes, Mark mentioned you were coming. Good, she interrupted, already surveying my home with a critical eye. Though I see this place needs adjustments. Where's my room? I'm exhausted. My room. The master bedroom. The one already stolen from me, now to be hers indefinitely. I dragged one of her suitcases, heavy as bricks, down the hall while she clicked her tongue at my decor. This rug is shabby, she sniffed at my Persian carpet, the one I'd loved for years. And these curtains too dark. At my age I need natural light. Change them tomorrow. With my money, of course. When we reached the bedroom, she inspected every drawer, tested the mattress like a critic at a furniture store, then finally announced, this will do, but wash the sheets with hypoallergenic detergent. I can't sleep unless everything is spotless. Another expense. Another trip to the store. Another piece of my pension stolen. By 6 on the dot, Marissa appeared in the kitchen, draped in silk pajamas and feathered slippers, like she owned the place. I need 2 scrambled eggs, dry, no oil. Whole wheat toast, lightly browned, not burnt. Coffee weak like tea. And fresh fruit, perfectly ripe, nothing else. She rattled it off like a queen giving orders. I had none of it. No eggs, no wheat bread, no fresh fruit. I drained my money on Rachel's endless lists over the weekend. Marissa, I don't have exactly what you're asking for, but I can. What do you mean you don't have it? She snapped, her voice echoing through the house. Didn't Mark tell you what I need? This is outrageous. A house without basic breakfast foods? Mark stormed in, adjusting his tie, irritated by the noise. What's going on? He barked. Your housekeeper doesn't have food for me, Marissa said, pointing at me like I was a broken appliance. Housekeeper. That's all I was to her. Not his mother-in-law. Not a human being. Just staff. Honey, didn't you go shopping this weekend? Mark asked me, that sharp, scolding tone in his voice that always made me feel like a child. Yes, but I used the money on what Rachel needed for the kids. Oh please, he cut me off. You always have excuses. My mother needs breakfast. Go to the store. Now. And next time plan better. At 7 in the morning I was supposed to march to the supermarket. Spend more money I didn't have. All to feed a woman who treated me like dirt in my own kitchen. And with what money? I asked quietly, something inside me starting to harden. With your pension, obviously, Mark scoffed. That's what it's for, right? To run the house. My pension is already gone for the month, I said firmly, surprising even myself. The silence was thick as wet cement. Mark's jaw tightened, and Marissa looked at me like I'd spat in church. Are you saying you can't buy food for my mother? Mark's voice rose, indignant. I'm saying I don't have money left, I repeated, steady this time. Incredible, Marissa gasped. This is the service your family gets? An employee who refuses to shop? Mark shook his head in disgust. If you can't handle the basic responsibilities of this house, maybe we need to reconsider these living arrangements. There it was again. The threat. Serve us without limits, or lose your own home. Rachel shuffled into the kitchen then, still in pajamas but wide awake. She had clearly been listening. What's happening here? She asked, though her tone said she already knew. Your mother refuses to go buy food for mine, Mark explained like a tattling schoolboy. Mom, Rachel said, her voice dripping with disappointment. Is it true you won't get breakfast for Grandma Marissa? The manipulation was flawless. They turned my lack of money into an act of cruelty, my resistance into selfishness. It's not that I don't want to, I said, my voice trembling. I simply don't have the money this month. Oh, Mom, you always exaggerate about money. Rachel sighed dramatically. Breakfast is $10–15. Don't tell me you don't have even that for your family. 10 today, 30 tomorrow, 45 the next day. A bottomless pit of demands draining me dry. Besides, Mark added, it's only temporary. My mother won't be here forever. She just needs time to adjust. Temporary. The same word they'd used when they moved in just for a few months 2 years ago. The same word they used every time they crossed another line. And how long is she staying? I asked, already knowing the answer. We don't know, Mark replied vaguely. Depends on how she feels. If she finds things she likes here. If she settles into the routine. The routine. Their routine. My servitude. And right there in that kitchen, being scolded in my own house for not spending my pension on the whims of a woman who despised me, something finally snapped. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't cinematic. It was quieter, like a dam cracking then crumbling, until the water couldn't be stopped anymore. An avalanche of clarity rushed in. Okay, I said, my voice calm, so calm it surprised even me. I'll go to the store and get what Marissa needs for breakfast. The tension in the room evaporated instantly. Everyone seemed relieved, as if my surrender had restored the natural order. Me obeying, them ruling. They didn't notice the change in my voice. They were too used to mistaking my silence for submission. Perfect, Mom, Rachel said, flashing that condescending smile she saved for when I finally came to my senses. I knew you'd understand how important it is to make Grandma Marissa feel welcome. I dressed quickly and left the house. But this time I didn't head straight to the food aisles. Instead, I walked to the pharmacy in the shopping plaza where I knew there was an ATM. Not to pull money for eggs and bread, but for something far more important. I withdrew $200 from my savings account. Money I had been hoarding for years for a true emergency. And now I realized this was it. The greatest emergency of all. The emergency of saving my dignity before it was gone forever. With the cash in my purse, I walked to a lawyer's office I'd seen advertised in the local paper. It was just past 8:30, but the receptionist told me that attorney David Miller opened for urgent consultations at 9. Is it an emergency? She asked gently, her kind smile almost breaking me. Yes, I said without hesitation. Yes, it is. David Miller was in his 50s, with a neatly trimmed beard and sharp, compassionate eyes that told me he had seen every kind of messy family case there was. Tell me what's happening, Mrs. Everett, he said, glancing at the name I had scribbled on his intake form. Mrs. Everett, I repeated, and for the first time in months, I said my own name with pride. Then I poured it all out. The ridiculous work schedule. The threats to throw me out. The way they drained my pension. Marissa barging in as if she owned the place. 20 minutes of words came spilling out, like a dam breaking. David listened silently, scribbling notes, his expression shifting from shock to indignation. When I finally stopped, chest heaving, he leaned back and said with piercing clarity, "Mrs. Everett, what you're describing is economic and emotional abuse. What your daughter and son-in-law are doing falls under elder exploitation." My stomach dropped. But Mark said they had rights since they've lived in the house for 2 years. In some states, after a certain amount of time, tenants can argue for residency rights, David explained. But nothing you've told me gives them legal claim to your house. They can't force you into servitude. They can't demand your pension. And they certainly can't move additional people into your home without your consent. It felt like a mountain had been lifted from my back. For the first time in 2 years, someone confirmed that I wasn't being dramatic or ungrateful or crazy. I wasn't wrong, they were. "What can I do?" I asked, but this time my voice carried hope. "Several things," he replied, scanning his notes. "First, you can terminate whatever informal agreement you had in writing. Second, you can set strict boundaries on how your home and money are used. Third, you can order unauthorized guests like Marissa to leave immediately." "And if they refuse?" I asked, picturing Rachel's tears, Mark shouting. "Then we pursue legal eviction. We can also file an elder abuse report." But in my experience, once people realize you have legal backing, they change their tune very quickly. He offered to draft a formal letter that day, one that would set the new terms: market rate rent, equal contributions to expenses, and full respect for my authority as the homeowner. "How much will this cost?" I asked nervously, expecting the worst. "For elder abuse cases, we discount fees," he said, almost kindly. $100 for today's consult. $200 for the letters. If it escalates to court, we can set up a payment plan. $300. Less than what Rachel and Mark had burned through on their so-called romantic getaway. $300 to reclaim my life. "Do it," I said firmly, pulling the money from my wallet with steady hands. "Draft the letters." "Excellent choice, Mrs. Everett," David said, smiling. "They'll be ready this afternoon. Do you want me to deliver them personally, or will you?" "Me," I said without pause. It's time I spoke to my family myself. When I left that office, I didn't feel like a whole new woman, but I did feel something I hadn't in a long time: solid. Supported. Armed with more than guilt and fear. Before heading home, I made one more stop: the bank. I asked the manager to change every password, every authorization. "Have you had unauthorized access before?" she asked delicately. "Let's just say I want to make sure I'm the only one with control of my money from now on." "Very wise," she said. "And do you want to revoke any linked credit card users?" Rachel's face flashed in my mind. Her endless emergencies. My pension leaking away one swipe at a time. "Yes," I said. "Cancel everything. Only my name stays." By the time I got home, it was nearly 11. I hadn't bought eggs or bread. I hadn't bought fruit or coffee. But I had brought back something far more important: power. A plan. Legal protection. Mark was already at work, but Rachel and Marissa were on the couch, looking annoyed that I'd taken so long. "Finally," Marissa huffed. "It's almost 11 and I haven't eaten a thing." "And where's the food?" Rachel demanded, eyeing my empty hands. "We need to talk," I said, my voice calm but firm. "All of us. Right now." They froze, glancing at each other, caught off guard by my tone. "Sit down," I ordered, pointing at the sofa. "This conversation is going to change everything in this house." I laid the letters on the coffee table, their heavy paper like a shield of dignity. "I've been to see a lawyer," I said, watching their eyes widen. "And I've learned a lot about my rights as the owner of this home." Rachel's face drained of color. Marissa looked confused, as if she couldn't process why a housekeeper would consult an attorney. "Mom, why would you do that?" Rachel asked, her voice trembling with panic under a thin layer of false concern. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because I wanted the truth," I replied evenly. "And the truth is very different from what you've made me believe." I handed them their letters. Rachel snatched hers, scanning fast, panic in her eyes. Marissa's hands shook as she read, her superiority slipping into raw shock. "This is insane," Rachel burst out, waving the letter. You can't just throw us out. We're family. I'm not throwing you out, I said coolly. I'm offering you the chance to stay. Under fair and legal conditions. Rachel's letter was clear. $800 rent, half the household expenses, and full respect for me as the owner. 800, she cried, her voice breaking. Mom, you know we don't have that kind of money. Then maybe it's time you get a real job, I replied, giving her back her own condescending tone. Or find a place you can afford. Marissa's letter was even simpler. 48 hours to vacate. You can't do this, she snapped, her voice cracking. I'm an old woman. You'd throw me on the street like a criminal? I'm not throwing you anywhere, I said firmly. I'm telling you to return to your own home. Or find a place where you're a guest, not a burden. Mark won't allow this, she shouted. Mark can defend you in your house, I shot back. This is mine. And my rules stand here. Rachel sat there silently, reading and rereading her letter as if the words might somehow vanish. Finally, her eyes filled with tears, fake ones, the same she had used her whole life to manipulate me. Mom, she whimpered. How could you do this to us? We love you. We just wanted to be a family. And you bring in lawyers? A real family doesn't hand their mother a work schedule, I said, my voice steady. A real family doesn't threaten to throw her out if she refuses to be their maid. A real family doesn't drain her pension and humiliate her in her own home. We never threatened to kick you out, she protested. Yes, you did, I said, pulling the crumpled schedule from my purse. Right here in your own handwriting. If you don't agree, you can find somewhere else to live. What do you call that? She opened her mouth, then closed it again, caught in her own trap. Fine, she muttered finally. Maybe we were too strict. We can adjust. Be more flexible. You don't need lawyers to solve family problems. No, Rachel, I said, standing tall. The problem isn't just the schedule. The problem is you've turned me into your servant. You've spent my money as if it was yours. You've moved people into my house without asking me. Marissa exploded then, red-faced. This is insane. Mark told me this was a loving family, not some crazy old woman who thinks her house is a hotel. Exactly, I said, locking eyes with her. This is not a hotel. This is my house. And in my house, guests are invited, not imposed. But I'm Mark's mother, she snapped, as if that settled everything. And I said with a steel I didn't know I had, am the owner of this house. Your relationship with Mark gives you no rights here. Rachel sat silently for a long time, her face tight as if she were calculating numbers in her head, probably figuring out how much it would cost to actually live on their own. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a desperate edge I had never heard before. Mom, let's be realistic, she said, trying to sound reasonable. We can't pay $800 in rent plus half the expenses. You know that. And you can't live alone at your age either. We need each other. I've lived alone before, I reminded her. For 10 years after your father passed, I managed just fine. And I live very well, thank you. But now you're older, she pressed, playing the age card like it was her last move. What happens if you get sick? What happens if you need help? Then I'll hire professional help, I said without hesitation. The thought had only just occurred to me, but it sounded solid the second I said it. There are plenty of services for seniors, people who get paid to do their job with respect. You'd pay strangers instead of letting your family help you? She asked, her voice dripping with insult. I'll pay professionals instead of being used by people who mistake love for free labor. I corrected her. There's a very big difference. Just then the phone rang. It was Mark, checking in, no doubt, to make sure his mother had been properly catered to. Rachel rushed to answer, her voice hushed but urgent, clearly reporting that a family crisis had exploded. While she whispered into the phone, Marissa shuffled closer. Her expression had shifted from outrage to something closer to respect. For the first time since she barged into my house, she actually looked at me as if I were a person. Honey, she said softly, maybe we can work something out. I don't have to stay in the master bedroom. I could sleep on the sofa. Oh, Marissa, I cut her off gently. The problem isn't which room you sleep in. The problem is you showed up uninvited. expecting to be treated like royalty indefinitely. That's not fair to me or to you. 20 minutes later, the front door opened. Mark walked in with a look I had never seen before. Not his usual smirk. Not his fake patience. This was something darker. The face of a man who realized his free ride was about to end. "Honey, we need to talk," he said, his voice controlled but brittle. "Rachel told me about these ridiculous letters from some charlatan lawyer." "Attorney David Miller is no charlatan," I replied evenly. "He specializes in landlord-tenant law and elder protection. And those letters aren't ridiculous. They're legal." "This is a betrayal," Mark snapped, his mask slipping completely. "After everything we've done for you, after keeping you company, after turning this empty house into a home full of life." The distortion of reality was so outrageous it nearly made me laugh. According to him, they had been my saviors, living rent-free, draining my pension, working me like a maid. "Mark, you're 42 years old," I said, keeping my patience in check. "If you want a house full of life, buy your own. Fill it with whatever you want, but not at my expense." "We've been saving for a house," he shouted, as if that erased 2 years of freeloading. "But it's impossible when kids are so expensive. You don't understand how hard it is to raise 2 children." "You're right," I admitted calmly, surprising him. "I don't understand because when I raised Rachel, I paid every bill myself. I didn't go looking for an older relative to bankroll me." Marissa jumped in then, putting on her best motherly act. "Honey, I know you're confused, but Mark is a good father and a good son. He doesn't deserve this kind of treatment from a woman your age who's clearly losing her mind." "Losing my mind?" I repeated, my chest burning. "For threatening your family with lawyers instead of settling things like civilized adults," she said, lifting her chin with practiced superiority. "Civilized adults," I countered. "Don't force family into unpaid labor. Civilized adults don't threaten the owner of a house with eviction." Mark had been pacing like a caged animal, and suddenly he stopped. His eyes glinted. He was about to play his strongest card. "Fine," he sneered. "If you want lawyers, we'll get lawyers. Guess what? We've been looking into our rights too." "What rights?" I asked, though I already knew. "Tenant rights," he said proudly. "We've lived here for more than 2 years. We've raised kids here. We've maintained this property while you—" I didn't let him finish. "Mark, show those claims to a real lawyer," I said calmly. "Because mine assured me that no court in this country grants tenant rights to freeloaders who never paid rent and drained the homeowner's pension." His smugness cracked instantly. I knew then his so-called research came from the internet or barroom gossip, not real legal advice. "And one more thing," I added, my voice steady as stone. "My lawyer also told me what you've been doing is called elder exploitation. And that, Mark, is a federal crime." The silence was total. Even the kids, who had come home from school and were listening from the hall, froze. "You're threatening to sue us?" Rachel whispered, her voice suddenly small, like she was 12 again. "I'm not threatening anything," I said firmly. "I'm telling you what the law says. The same law you've ignored for 2 years." "Why is everyone yelling? Why's Grandma crying?" Ethan asked, stepping into the room with his backpack still on. And yes, Marissa was crying, but not with sorrow. With fury. With humiliation. "It's okay, sweetheart," I said, pulling him into a hug. "The adults are just talking about how we're going to live in this house from now on." "Are we leaving?" Valerie asked timidly, appearing behind her brother. Her question stabbed me straight in the heart, but it also reminded me why I was standing firm. These kids deserved a family built on respect, not manipulation. "That depends on your parents," I told her honestly. "If they agree to the new rules, they can stay. If not, they'll find another place to live." "What rules?" Ethan asked bluntly. "Rules like all adults work and share expenses," I explained. "Rules like no one forces anyone else to be a servant. Rules like everyone deserves respect." Mark shot me a glare that once would have made me cower. Now it just looked pathetic. "You're confusing the kids with your adult drama," he said. "They were already confused," I shot back. Confused watching their grandma treated like a maid. Confused hearing their parents talk about throwing me out of my own home. At least now they know there's another way to live. Rachel rushed to gather the kids, hugging them tight with theatrical tenderness. Go do your homework, she told them. The adults need to finish this conversation. The room grew heavier after they left, like a chess game where everyone knew the rules had just changed. All right, Mark finally said, his voice softening into negotiation. Let's say you're serious. How much time are you giving us? The letters give you 30 days, I said. 30 days to decide. Stay under the new conditions or leave. And my mother? He asked, jerking his head toward Marissa, who was still trembling. She has 48 hours, I said without blinking. She has no agreement with me. She wasn't invited. She goes. You can't throw out an old woman in 2 days. Mark barked. I can. And I will, I replied. She has her own home. If she doesn't want to live alone, she can move somewhere appropriate for her age. Or with family that actually wants her there. 3 months later, I woke up in my own bed in my own room at 7 in the morning because I wanted to. Not because a schedule ordered me to. The silence in the house wasn't lonely. It was peace. Marissa had stormed out on the second day, cursing and crying, vowing never to speak to me again. A blessing in disguise. Mark had scrambled for money to stick her in a hotel until she finally moved into senior apartments, where, so I heard later, she complained endlessly that the staff wasn't as efficient as I had been. Rachel and Mark had tried everything in those 30 days. Denial, guilt, rage, even fake politeness. None of it worked. At the end, they packed up and rented a 2-bedroom across town. For $800 a month plus expenses. Funny how the money appeared when they weren't dealing with me. The first few days were strange. The house felt cavernous after years of constant noise and demands. But soon that emptiness turned into something wonderful, freedom. I could have breakfast when I wanted, watch the shows I liked, buy flowers for my table just because I felt like it. The first time I spent $15 on fresh daisies, I cried right there in the store. $15 for me. Not for them. Lucy was a rock through it all. We started going to lunch, hitting the farmer's market on Saturdays, even taking watercolor classes. Don't you miss the kids' noise? She asked once. I miss my grandkids, I admitted. But I don't miss being their unpaid nanny. That's a big difference. Now Ethan and Valerie visit every other Saturday. And you know what? It's better. I'm just their grandma now. I can spoil them, listen to them, laugh with them without being worn down by exhaustion. Why don't you live with us anymore, Grandma? Valerie asked me once. Because adults need their own homes, I told her. Your parents need theirs and I need mine. But you still love us, right? She whispered. More than anything, I promised. And that's why I want you to grow up knowing love means respect, not taking advantage. That morning, 3 months after reclaiming my life, I woke up with something I hadn't felt in years. Hope? Not dread. Not anxiety. Just hope. David had called me the week before. Rachel and Mark had dropped any silly claims to my house. Their real lawyers told them what mine already had. They never had any rights here. How does freedom feel, Mrs. Everett? David asked me. Like waking up from a nightmare, I told him. Like remembering I'm a person, not an object. Now at 66, I'm learning salsa at the community center. I look in the mirror and see a woman who stands tall again, whose eyes shine, who has something she lost along the way. She has dignity. And when I lock my door and step out into the world, I know it's mine, my house, my life, my choice.